To preface this video, I will start with a personal story about one of my own dark fantasies. Around the age of 12, I had finished reading the Hunger Games trilogy. The Hunger Games, for those who have not read, is a book about a girl named Katniss Everdeen, who starts a revolution against a tyrannical government. Along the way, she realises that despite her cause being just, all that was wrought is more suffering on both sides. The book itself is profoundly anti-war and had a large effect on me in my early teenage years. I had decided that all forms of violence and conflict were not desirable and that the world should be peaceful. I adopted the identity of a pacifist. It was also around the time I was getting into trouble a lot at school. I was having temper problems and not listening to authority figures. I was about to start a new school and told myself I was going to be quote-unquote good. So I kept my head down and avoided conflict at all costs. Many of my viewers may understand that this is the last thing a teenage boy should do, but I was being chastised for it and taught to suppress. I stuck by my new pacifist identity, but unfortunately it left me with more problems than I had believed it would solve. Instead of fighting back when provoked, I would instead ignore. I also did not want to provoke under any circumstances, so I stayed away from social situations. As you can imagine, it didn't make me very popular, and many people just thought I was weird. I should also point out I was also overweight and my hygiene was terrible. Not exactly the greatest combination. I sort of came out of my shell a bit in the later years, but I was still an outcast. This outsider syndrome and feelings of social rejection eventually began to turn to resentment in my later years. I would get thoughts of enacting violent revenge on people that I believed had wronged me. These fantasies grew so strong, I started to research people who had carried out these fantasies and fell down a rabbit hole for a certain gentleman who I will not name as I don't want a channel strike. He felt rejected by the world and eventually carried out a spree before ending himself. I felt a disturbing amount of understanding for why he did what he did. This is the part where I put a disclaimer and say there was never any real risk of me carrying out such an act. But to deny that is to deny the solution to the problem. That recognition, that acceptance that it could be you, is where the solution stems from. Allow me to explain. I was weak in real life, physically and mentally. So I fantasized about what I could not have: strength and the will to act. It was a radical weakness and imbalance in real life that led to a radical imbalance in my mind. What's interesting is, by using this explanation, we can explain how mass fantasies grip an entire nation. Here are some examples. The Me Too movement was around the same time 50 Shades of Grey came into fruition. The entire enslavement of a race now has an erotic video category designated to the reverse of that. The Weimar Republic, whose territory was constantly being encroached on by other nations, was replaced by an expansionist authoritarian regime. The breakdown of the nuclear family and normal boundaries has spawned one of the most popular erotic video categories in the world, and a gender identity crisis in the West has caused a spawn of self-improvement channels promoting reclamation of classic masculine ideals. Those are just a few, but you get my point. To reconcile this difference, you must bring the two into balance. This is what psychologists mean by integration. In my case, it required a radical overhaul in worldview and the way I acted. I had to get to where it started. It started in my pacifist mentality. I had to recognize that peace is not being harmless, and that the core precondition for peace is the will to act and defend oneself. I began to stand up for myself again, and put myself into situations where I was not comfortable, As I gained strength in real life, the fantasies began to diminish. I rarely have them anymore, and when I do, I can either slap them down with a dose of reality or just laugh at them. But you must understand, I came to terms with the fact I was very capable of doing that. I was very capable of acting on those evil impulses. Through being conscious of that evil, I mastered it and directed that energy into becoming wiser and stronger. This technique isn't just unique to my situation. It may work for your own fantasies. Perhaps you have a humiliation fetish. Maybe you're too uptight and need to let it go sometimes. Maybe you fantasize about cross-dressing. Maybe there's some feminine qualities you need to integrate into your personality that's being suppressed as a result. It doesn't have to be explicit, but this is why you should never fear your fantasies. They guide you towards new areas of personality development. If you have something you want to get to the bottom of, or you just want someone to genuinely listen to you, I offer personal coaching calls. You can add me on Discord for a free consultation. On a side note, these coaching calls have been one of the most interesting things I've ever done. It's made me realize how much I enjoy understanding a person and helping them. There's a link in the description if you're interested in that. I hope this video has helped you with something you may be dealing with. That's all for now, and remember that in filth it will be found.